So you have to communicate your expectations with your employees. It's easy to get frustrated with someone when they're not doing what you think they should be doing, or they're not meeting these goals that you may have had for them. But if you've not communicated that to them, then how are they supposed to know that that's something they're even supposed to be working on?
Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life by Atticus Incorporated. What if you could hang out with successful small and solo law firm attorneys, ask them about their successes and failures, their business strategies and mindset habits, then take an insight or two to guide your own growth in your practice? Each week, Steve Riley shares an in-depth look at how to work less while maintaining high client service standards, reduce your stress levels while growing your income, and find time to make changes when you are time-starved. Steve is a lawyer coach for more than 20 years and a former trial attorney. His goal is to provide strategies to help you balance your lives and grow your practice. Now, here's Steve.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Great Practice, Great Life. And today our episode features Ashley Waters. Ashley was on before talking about how she used the DISC profile to build a team. And today's Ashley's back talking to us about how she's using something simple, something so simple, so simple. It's a strategy that we've nicknamed helping your team, helping you grow, which is the power of employee reviews and feedback. Ashley, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Well, it's good to have you back. How is life treating you since we talked last?
It's great. So all things are good.
All things are good. So I asked you back because in our last episode, we talked about how you were using the DISC profile and how you and Lori were using it, and you were learning through Practice Growth Program, how all this stuff kind of intersected. One of the things that we started to talk about was how you grew so quickly. You've grown very quickly in a very rural community, and one of your secrets is this particular strategy. So, why do you think giving your employees, your team feedback helps you grow and helps you make money? How does this work in your world?
Well, I think that if you have expectations of people, you have to communicate those expectations to them. And it's better to address issues as they occur rather than letting them build and fester. It's better for both you and for the employee to address them as you go. That, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Now, one of the things I failed to do actually was I didn't set up a good context. So, tell everybody where you're at and what you're doing as far as a practice goes so they understand why this is so critical. It's not like you're in downtown Miami. Where is your practice and what do you do?
So I'm in rural Tennessee, in a little town called Cookeville. We are halfway between Nashville and Knoxville. And I have a small niche practice. We do estate planning and estate administration, basically. So I've been practicing for a little over 10 years and opened my own practice right at 5 years ago. Started out with two people, myself and my paralegal, just the two of us for a while. Both of us are named Ashley, by the way. So she ended up deciding to go by her middle name. She took one for the team, so it wouldn't be so confusing. But we started out with just two people, and then we've grown to a team of I've got four full-time employees, two part-time employees, and a some seasonal college students who come back and work when they're home from college. So we have grown rather quickly over the last 5 years in this niche practice area in this rural town.
Now, this is interesting because what we're going to talk about, some lawyers will say, well, actually, that works really well in estate planning, but I do family law, or I do PI law, or I am in a big city. Why do I have to give team feedback? Why do I care? And why do you care? Why do you think it's important to lawyers?
I mean, I think it transcends all areas of practice. I mean, it's just about developing a good team and being able to communicate with them efficiently and timely so that you're always improving. And so I think that feedback loop with them is really important. And it doesn't matter if you're estate planning or personal injury or big town or small town. I mean, I think that in a bigger town, there might be a larger pool of potential employees, but none of us have the goal of having high turnover and having to constantly backfill positions. So I think it transcends all areas of practice.
Well, before you started giving feedback, what were some of the challenges that you were facing in your practice?
Well, so when it was just two of us, when we first started our practice, we worked very closely together. So there was constant feedback, but it wasn't very structured. And we probably went 2+ years without even having a formal, even annual review, which I'm not proud of, but it's part of where we started and, now where we're at comparatively. But being able to give and receive feedback on a regular basis has just been really crucial for us to be able to grow this practice, and to be able to provide better service for our clients, and also just to keep my team happy and content. And it's a big reason why I think we have good culture here. We have a practice where people want to come work with us, and so I think a big part of that is how we're able to work together, and then being able to constantly give that feedback to each other.
That's perfect. I think when most solos start, they may go for a considerable period of time, just themselves and one support person. Then they go to two, then they go to three. And when you start going to two to three to four, then the complexity of communication jumps. You got four times the amount of emails, four times the amount of verbal communications, four times the risk of miscommunication, four times the risk of poor communication among clients. Where's this? Where's that? As you grow, the risk of poor communication jumps, and the risk of poor habits, tribal practices, this is just how we do it here, for example, are all things that start to accumulate. And when you start to strategically start to think about how do I give people formal feedback, is in itself a pivoting point for the growth of most law firms, because you're really trying to eliminate misalignment, confusion, stress. And ultimately, for me, I think we're trying to get strategic delegation as part of the scaling strategy. As lawyers start to try and make more money and grow their practices, I usually look at saying, okay, talk to me about what's your team development program look like? And they're like, well, what does that mean? What's your plan to grow your team? So I think right where you're at is the perfect place to start doing this. How did you start giving feedback? What did it look like? And talk to me about where you're at now.
Well, I think, at first, like I said, when it was just myself and a support person, it was just, a daily communication. And we really didn't have a formal process of giving any kind of feedback. And then I probably did my first annual review with my employees right before I joined Atticus. I really struggled with that though, because I didn't really know how to format that. I didn't have any resources to, any forms for them to fill out or for me to fill out to help kind of guide the review. And with my disc assessment, I'm a really high D, so I tend to be really direct, sometimes brutally honest, and so it's helpful for me to have something that's a little bit more structured, so that I can really put more thought into how I'm going to approach a specific issue, with a particular employee. And so I really struggled with the review process for a long time until I joined Atticus. I joined Atticus a little over 2 years ago. I started doing private coaching with Lori Pulvermucker. And then about a year ago, I joined the PGP program, the Practice Growth Program. And so I'm doing some private coaching and also some group coaching. And Atticus has so many great resources. I didn't realize until Lori and I were discussing the reviews that Atticus has forms, for employee reviews and different types of employees, even. And so that was a real kind of a breaking point or not a breaking point, but that was a crucial point for me that transformed my review process and made it more formalized, having these forms I could use from Atticus. So we started implementing annual reviews with every employee, and then I realized that thinking about the next review is however many months out, but I've got this specific issue that we need to address now. Well, maybe we don't need to be waiting a year to do a formal review. Maybe we need to be doing that more often. And so we started doing quarterly reviews with shorter, still formal, but a little less formal than an annual review with each of the employees. But then it got to the point where it was like I'm having reviews every other week with somebody new. So I've really leaned into this past year delegating some of the interim reviews to my office manager, kind of realizing I don't have to do all of that work myself. So I still do the annual reviews, and we use the Atticus forms for that. And then I have sort of delegated the shorter term reviews with my input, but it's not on my calendar. And so that's been really helpful to me because I do feel like it's important for the reviews to occur more frequently because you're, like I said earlier, you're addressing issues as they come up instead of letting something fester. And the more proactively you can address something, then it's going to improve, hopefully, if all things go well, more quickly, which then in turn improves the business. It's less stressful, it's better for your clients, you're providing better services, whatever the issue is, you're addressing it more quickly. So it helps you from a profitability standpoint too.
That's perfect. So I want to talk about from a big picture perspective. So if you're listening to Ashley, you might be wondering, when should I start giving reviews? Well, I think, Ashley, when would you recommend people start giving reviews of their team members?
Now,
Thank you.
I mean, if you're not, you should start. So Uh, I mean, I think that it's easy to start with an annual review, and you could base that, you could do everyone's at the same time. You could base that off of their annual, hire date, which is what we typically do, just so they're not all occurring at the same time for my purposes. Um, but yeah, if you're not doing that, start doing it because it will be really helpful and it's important from a culture standpoint. Turnover is expensive for a business owner. And if you can keep your employee happy and they feel like they're supported by you and they have the tools that they need and the resources they need and they're set up for success, they're a lot less likely to jump ship or for you to need to let them go. So financially, it makes a lot of sense. It's not so tangible, but from an intangible standpoint, it's very important.
Well, there's a couple levels to this. One is, I would imagine that you also get feedback from them, like what's working, not working in the relationship. What's one of the things that they gave you as feedback, when your team members gave you as feedback that surprised you, or you're like, "Wow, that's a great piece of information. I didn't know that, but that's great. I'm glad you told me."
Well, something that comes to mind, which isn't really specific about one specific employee, but I was having some frustrations with because I'm a high D and I just want to get things done. And I would come in and everyone in the office would just chit chat and it would, here we are 30, 45 minutes later and nobody's really sat down to check their email or their voicemails and so that was something that I had addressed with one of the employees. Well, I think I addressed that with my office manager. I said, why do you think this is happening? And we realized that it was a lot of these it might be the socialization piece of their different profiles. They need some time to kind of just kind of warm up to coming to work in the morning. And so with that, and that feedback was given back to me with me addressing this kind of frustration that I had. Well, this is, I think, why we're doing it. And so what we decided to do was, and we all work with time templates in our office. And so we all have our own time template, but we put time on the calendar in the morning on our time templates for everybody to catch up, you know, everybody to just say good morning, get their cup of coffee, just kind of chit chat. Mondays, it tends to last a little longer because we have the weekend than it does the rest of the week. But by building time into the time template for that, they know it's okay. And it is important for them to build, their camaraderie among the team members. But I'm also no longer frustrated because I understand why they need that, and it's part of the time template. So it's that was some constructive kind of, I guess, constructive feedback that was given back to me that we were able to implement something internally that made everybody happy, so to speak.
It's interesting. So you institutionalized the complaint, basically. You said, okay, I got this complaint, I got this frustration. Why is this happening? Let's go ahead and organize it. Let's just go ahead and organize it. Put it on everyone's time template so we all know expect it. We know when it starts, we know when it ends, more importantly. And then we acknowledge it. We get together as a team, we socialize a little bit, see how everybody's doing, and then we go to work. So we kind of eliminate a lot of the risk of unplanned socialization during the day because we organize it, got it done in the first thing in the morning, and off we go for the rest of the day. So it's very, very clever solution to how do I support my team from their needs to connect with each other, especially those who might be high eyes on the disc, and at the same time eliminate that occurring from the rest of the day to not make it a social club. It is a place of business, so we have to figure out how do I institutionalize that intention as well. There are a couple things here that I would like to highlight for the audience. I've made a couple of notes. One is usually about 3 to 4 employees is when you need to start developing a team leader. And it sounds like that's about when you did it, Ashley. You start to delegate some of the management, some of the reviews, right? About 3 to 4. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think so. And what we did actually was my long-term employee that's been with me the longest, that used to be my paralegal, she let me know, we talked about the things in her job that she enjoyed, what she wasn't enjoying, where she saw herself in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And she's very loyal and she wants to see us grow. And she really wanted to move more into a management position. So I moved her into an office manager position, and it took us a while, but we found a good fit for a paralegal to replace her. And so we're in the process now of shifting some of my responsibilities as the owner and the manager, and wearing all of the hats that we do, over to her, including some of these reviews. And that shift has occurred over the course probably of the last year. Still a work in progress. We're still kind of figuring out how that's going to work. But yeah, I would say at the time. So right now we have 4 full time and 2 part time. So we've hired probably 2. So yeah, I'd say we were around 4 employees when that shift kind of naturally occurred.
Nothing is going to impact your law practice like AI. The impact of AI on the legal industry will be transformative. The question is, are you prepared? Now, I've done a podcast on this previously, the 3 challenges of integrating AI into your law practice. One of the things I want to remind you is that we're teaching in 2025 a Grow Your Practice with AI course. Now, this will be taught 4 times live, but it includes 22 hours of previously recorded episodes in 2024. So episodes that we taught everything from how to use AI to look at deposition, go through complex documents, how to train your team using AI as a shortcut for team training. All those different courses are recorded and ready for your viewing. Now, if you're an Atticus member, it's already included in your membership. All you have to do is sign up for the class. We'll teach it 4 times live in 2025. Now, if you're new to Atticus and you're not an existing member, the investment is $1,500 for this program. $1,500 covers it all of 2025. Furthermore, if you are an audience member and you want to take advantage of a special code just for audience members, the code is AI Podcast 300. So when you register, it takes $300 off your investment. So the $1,500 drops to $1,200. So if you haven't taken advantage of this, it's a no-brainer deal. So if you're new to Atticus and you want to check us out, this is a great way of checking us out. It's a virtual program, so you don't have to travel anywhere. I promise you, you'll make 10 times that investment back. So with that, the information on how to register is in the link below. Look forward to seeing you there. Yeah, it's usually, if you're listening to this and you're a lawyer, you're trying to figure out, okay, when should I start developing a team leader? My rule of thumb is right when you get about 3 full-time people, then you start thinking about, okay, who should I start developing as my team leader? This is one of the reasons we developed the team leader program. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check that out. But it takes about 6 months to a year strategically to develop that role, because you have to think through, okay, what's this person going to take off my plate? How do I train them to do this? What do I have to take away from them? Generally speaking, if you're looking to develop a team leader, you're going to take about 50% of what that person's currently doing away from them immediately so they can start to have space on their calendar to start to take over some of the roles that you're going to be delegating. The big mistake that a lot of lawyers make, and you did not make, Ashley, which is I'm now going to give the person all the management responsibilities I'm doing, plus the work they're currently doing. And that's how you crush a really great person, make them very frustrated, and make them quit. So that is a very, very big common mistake I see a lot of lawyers make. So I want to talk about that briefly. The second thing that you kind of brought up here, there's a big distinction between being reactive and giving people feedback as you go along to more of a strategic approach, thinking through how do I develop my team. And part of that is coming out of a survival mindset. A lot of solos, when they start their practice, is like they're just like, hey, I just got to pay the bills, man. I just got to make payroll. I just got to get to the next payroll and get to the next payroll. And then the next payroll after that. And then how do I pay rent and how do I make my tax payment? So the thought of strategically building a firm sometimes doesn't really occur for a good 2 years like yours did, because you're kind of in a survival mode. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Was that your experience?
I do. And I think that at first, when you're in survival mode, I think you always are when you first open your own practice, when when you're especially, I mean, maybe that's different for people who buy into a practice, but especially when you're just starting from scratch, it's 100% survival mode. You don't know if that phone's going to ring on day one when you open your doors. And so, yeah, you're worried about paying the bills, taxes, all of the things. What I found, and I'm still working on this, is that we were very successful right away. We grew so fast, though, that I didn't really build the foundation that I should have built along the way. So, what I'm doing now strategically, and what Atticus is helping me do, is to go back and kind of rebuild that foundation and implement the right procedures and policies and handbooks and manuals and all of those things that I really just didn't do when I should have done earlier. So that then we are in a position to grow again. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I think that really it occurred to me that that was an issue probably 2-ish years into my my solo practice. So
That's good. That's good. That's perfect. You're doing great. You really are. Really, what you're doing is building what I call a capability infrastructure. It's like a platform to jump to the next level. So you're doing a phenomenal job with that. What are the top three things that you would recommend to lawyers to focus on when implementing reviews for the first time?
well, I think first of all, number one is how often are you going to have a formal review and who's going to do it. So I think, for us, we put those reviews on the calendar a year in advance. So we know when it's coming up, we have adequate time to prepare for it. And like I was saying earlier, I don't handle, I am the boss, but I don't handle all of the reviews that occur throughout the year. So I think being strategic about how often you're going to review, how formal that review is going to be, and who's going to be conducting the review, I think that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is probably making sure that there's a structure in place for the review. And I floundered with that for a while in the beginning until, I realized there are resources out there that can help me to put some structure to this review. What we do is we use that one of the Atticus forms, and I have the employee fill it out and I fill it out. And you basically are kind of ranking yourself, and then I'm ranking them. And then I pull their disc assessment in to try to figure out how to address the issues I need to address with them specifically. And then we have that review. And so just having some structure to it, especially for me being a high D, I tend to be very abrupt. And so it's been really helpful for me to have a more productive review and actually be able to meet them where they're at and to be able to speak their language better. So putting some structure to it, I think, would be the second thing. And I think, and this kind of goes along with the first, but not being afraid to delegate. I've leaned into that a lot this past year, but like I do the annual reviews, but then I don't always do the quarterly reviews. And we've even started doing all of our employees are having just like a 20-minute weekly check in with my office manager now. And that way we can make sure they have the resources they need, that they have the tools that they need, that they're being supported, and address any issues literally as they come up rather than even waiting until the end of the quarter or the end of the year. But you're only one person and you can't manage, a team of 10 people potentially. I can't, I know that. And so not being afraid to delegate that, because it's better for the employee to have that feedback, even if it's not coming directly from you, than to not get it at all. And so that was kind of revolutionary for me, or revelationary for me over the past year or so.
I promise you can't manage a team of 10. I promise. It
Oh, well.
it's well, you can't. Here's the thing that a lot of lawyers get confused on when they start reading management books. They don't understand that a lot of the management books are aimed at full-time managers. And if you're a lawyer and you're managing a team, you're also practicing law full time. You're also rainmaking full time. And you also have a life outside the practice. So the span of management theory that you read about in a lot of books will say, well, you can manage up to 10 to 14 people. No, you can't. Not if you're a lawyer. And you can probably manage 4 to 6 in span of management. And that's why most solos cap out about 4 to 6. Nothing to do with marketing, everything to do about their ability to scale based on their management infrastructure. So 10 would be disastrous. And I know that from experience, Ashley. I can tell you my magic number was 14, and 14 would be just disastrous. 4 to 6 lawyers, 12 to 14 staff. That was beyond my management skill set. I did that twice in PI and once in estate planning, and it just terrible, terrible, terrible. I would never recommend it. Management infrastructure, the way you're going, is really brilliant move, just brilliant move. As you listen, as you think about this, and you want to, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you first started doing the review process, what would be the biggest advice you would give yourself?
Oh, it's just to give yourself some grace, I think. I like for things to be done really well. And so sometimes things don't get done because they're not going to be done perfectly. And I think that I felt that way about the review process, was if I can't do this correctly and I don't really know the right way to do it, then we just won't do it at all. And so, it's a learning process, and every review that you do, you're going to get better at it. It's going to become easier for you. And so I think just kind of just do it and give yourself some grace, and just rip the band-aid off, because it took me a while to realize that just doing it at all, even if it's not a perfect review, is better than not doing it, and the employee, not getting the support they need or the feedback that they need in a timely manner.
So your argument, a bad review done is 100% better than a great review never done.
Right.
I think it's perfect advice. Why do you think this is so critical for small firm lawyers from a scaling perspective and a growth perspective?
Well, I mean, I think that it's as much as you wanting to make sure that your employees are following the processes and doing their job really well. It's also making sure that they have the support that they need. It's part of building a strong culture and retaining employees so that you can continue to grow without having to go back and, backfill positions. So I think for me, I look at it as strategic in ensuring that my employees are happy, supported, that they're in the roles that match their profiles, but also their desires and their goals for the future. And I think that, it doesn't matter what practice area you have, it doesn't matter what town you're in or what city you're in, but building a great team is crucial to growth and to being able to collect revenue, and to, you get all the people in the world can hire you, but you've got to have a good team to get the work done to get paid. So I feel like building your team is one of the most crucial and critical things that you can do, especially, I mean, for me as a solo practitioner, is I want to be able to walk away, go on vacation or go to the practice growth program, go to my PGP meeting for a couple of days or go, I want to be able to take a step away and know that the business is going to run smoothly. And so I think all of that, it's all, feeds in the review process feeds into that.
Perfect. So let me see if I get this straight. For you to build a great practice, you need a great team. And to build a great team, they need to give great, consistent feedback. And starting with some form of review process, whatever it may be, is far better than no review process. So I think that makes perfect sense to me. Hopefully, to our audience, our members are listening, that they're like, okay, I've been thinking about this, I've been playing with it. I think I need to take Ashley's advice and get on board with some form of review process for my team, or at least up the game. My experience has been when you start doing the review process, like you've talked about, you start to shift your thinking about how to grow your team. You start to think about how to develop your team, how to train your team. Do you see that developing for you as your mindset shifts more and more away from survival to growing and dominating your market? Do you see that as kind of a core component for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that in survival mode, you're just trying to get through and get by. And sometimes, you'll do things or say things and then you'll go back and, apologize later. But I feel like, you can't hold it against somebody if they've not met your expectations, if you've not communicated that or you've not given them the tools to work with to do what you expect them to do.
Whoa,
And
whoa,
so
whoa, 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 wait. That's crazy talk. Say that again really slow, because I think what you're saying is radical and a lot of lawyers would totally disagree with you. Say it again really slow.
So you have to communicate your expectations with your employees. It's easy to get frustrated with someone when they're not doing what you think they should be doing or they're not meeting these goals that you may have had for them. But if you've not communicated that to them, then how are they supposed to know that that's something they're even supposed to be working on? And that I think applies across the board. I mean, I try to use that with my family, with my kids, with my husband, with my friends. It's like I can't get upset with you if you're not doing something, if I haven't communicated to you that I'd like for you to do that. So I think that setting those expectations and communicating those to your employees, your team is crucial. And the review process is it's a great way to do that because you can set, goals for them that align with your organizational goals, 90 days out, 6 months out, a year out, whatever that looks like for you, and you're communicating that, and then you have objectives that you can come back to when it's time for the next review to see how they're coming along moving towards that goal. So I think that's really important.
I think the most important element about that, Ashley, and I know I made you repeat it twice, is it requires the lawyer to get clear on their expectation. So I think a lot of lawyers get upset when people don't meet their expectations. And most of the time, the lawyer has never communicated to themselves about what the expectations are. They're just mad. Like they're not doing this, they're not doing that. And most of the breakdown is because they've never got clear in their own mind what their expectations are, and they've never communicated the expectations, and never trained the expectations, and they've never managed the expectations, and they never gave feedback on the expectations. So the strategic element of this, the takeaway for me as I'm talking to you, is I've seen so many lawyers get so frustrated. I'm like, let's boil it down. Are you, the lawyer, the owner, the manager, clear on what your expectations are? And generally speaking, they'll say no, but that person should know. They should know this.
Your mind.
They should know this. Well, how should they know this? Well, anyone would know that. Well, how would anyone know that? Well, it's just obvious. Well, how's that obvious? It's taken 35 years of marriage for me to really understand that, my psychic capabilities are not as good as they need to be, nor is my spouse's psychic capability. So a lot of the clarity around expectation becomes where you need to slow down to speed up. And this is the core for me of scaling and growing your firm to profitability, is that you have to slow down, strategically think it through, get clear on the expectations, communicate the expectations, train and coach the expectations, and give feedback. And that's what you're doing brilliantly. You're doing a great job at it. Really well done. Really, really well done. One more question before we start to wrap up. What's one thing a listener can do this week to get started in giving either feedback or a review process going in their practice?
Well, I think going ahead and sitting down and looking at the calendar and putting reviews on the calendar, even if you look at all your employees, and obviously depending on how many employees you have, if there's, more than 4 to 6, you may need to delegate this piece of it. But looking at their start date and just go ahead and calendar that review meeting. And then I would say if you're a member of the Atticus community, logging in and downloading those resources and choosing a form that you want to use and giving that, we actually keep it on our server in a public place so our employees know when it's coming up to time when we're approaching their review, they'll just go print it out and they'll work on it. So, I think calendar the reviews, starting with an annual review is fine, I think. And then downloading those forms from Atticus, if you're working with Atticus, that will help to put some structure to what that review will look like. And it may not be perfect. It may not be even the form that you use from Atticus. You may want to tweak it. And so maybe the next time you do a review, you may create your own form and modify that a little bit, but you've got to start somewhere. So I think that's probably the easiest place to start.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So you got to start somewhere. If you're a member, you can download it from the member portal. If you're in a group program, you can talk to your member advisor. If you're working with a practice advisor, talk to them. There's tons of getting started forms and tools inside of Atticus that can help you think about how you get this moving. Ashley, any last piece of advice to our audience?
I think the only thing what I would say is that, it's always a work in progress, all of this, right? And I think that we all need to realize that none of us have it 100% figured out. But you've got to start somewhere. And so these little baby steps of things you can do, whether it's employee reviews or whatever it is with your practice, that they will accumulate over time. And it's taken me, I've been in Atticus for 2 years now. And this year, especially the second half of this year, I've really seen it all come together. And it's still a work in progress. There's still always going to be room for improvement, but just give yourself some grace and know that no one has it all figured out. And so we're all just here trying to do the best we can and build a great team so we can have a great practice, so we can have a great life. But it's always a work in progress. So give yourself some grace.
I love that. I love that. The premise of the summit to summit worksheet is year to year, goal to goal. And I think right when you get to a point where you're at in your practice, you'll say, okay, I kind of got my feet under me. I feel my balance going. And knowing you, I think you'll take a step back and go for another doubling of your revenue, another doubling of your team. And then you'll start the whole growth process all over again from a different perspective, but you'll do it on top of the infrastructure that you've built. So Ashley, thanks for coming on and talking to us. I know it's always difficult. It's difficult. Every lawyer that comes on here goes, I don't think I'm the right person for you to be interviewing. There's somebody either better or they're doing it better than I am, or someone else is more successful than I am. But everybody has something to contribute from one way or another, from some perspective or another. So whether you're in a little rural community in Tennessee or working in Miami or Chicago or LA, it doesn't matter. We're all doing the same thing, playing for a better practice and a better life. And you contributed that today. So thank you so much. And thanks for being on the episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining this week's episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Please tune in weekly to get the next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, like, and don't hesitate to share it with a friend who you think this episode could help. With that, thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's episode.